Hello everybody, Lucas Mackintosh here and welcome to my retro video game channel dedicated to reviewing those obscure, underrated and just plain strange video games that exist from gaming's past. On the show today I'll be looking at a couple of games featuring Sonic's furry sidekick Tails, or Miles Prower as most people know him as. That's right, in the 90s Tails was given two exclusive games, placing him in the hero role for the Sega Game Gear. Tails Sky Patrol, which was a Japan-only release in 1995, and Tails Adventure, which made its way to Europe's shores the same year. I'm sure that we all remember the mid-90s, Nintendo and Sega, the Bit Wars, Britpop, and Sega's determination to ensure that Sonic got games, and lots of them. Despite the Mega Drive and Super Nintendo about to be superseded by 32-bit and 64-bit consoles, and with the Sega Master System dead in the water, Sega wanted more than anything to keep their 8-bit colour Game Gear alive by entrusting developers to push the system to produce not only some good looking games, but ones that would create some new genres within the Sonic universe. I mean, Little Tails was always Sonic's invincible sidekick, and although it was playable in most Sonic games, it always felt to me that early on he got shortchanged. Now, I know later Sonic games used him a lot more, but I'm sure we all remember when we were with a group of friends all sat around the Sega Mega Drive playing Sonic 2, arguing as to who would be Sonic and who would be Tails. Well, often I would have to be Tails, and you know what, I really didn't mind. I have a lot of love and compassion for the little fox, and he has always been my favourite character out of the two. Sonic might have attitude, can go a million miles an hour and is a true video game hero, but Tails can fly, he can invent stuff and is loyal to the very end, and that counts for a lot in my book. So with the Sega Game Gear trying to keep up with Nintendo's Game Boy, which just seemed to keep producing amazingly graphical and impressive games, the Donkey Kong Land series, it was decided that it was time for Tails to have his own adventures and to change up the formula. So grab yourself a cup of tea and let's delve into these two games and try to work out what makes them so unique and if they are worth playing today. First things first, let's have a look at Tails Sky Patrol. Now the story to this game is quite strange as Tails decides to leave Sonic and go on his own adventure. Perhaps the fox felt he needed to prove to himself that he could be a standalone hero and if given the chance could be just as popular as Sonic is. You always will be to me, Tails. You always will be to me. Anyway, he lands on an island populated by railroads and after hearing a voice, hides in some bushes. I swear I'm not making this up, it's actually in the manual. He listens out and hears a strange cackle coming from a witch who is riding a minecart. This witch announced to herself that she now owns the island and anyone who gets in the way will be turned into crystals. Tails decides on the spot to put a stop to the witch known as Witchcart, which is actually a name, save the island's inhabitants and also defeat her army of baddies. Okay, so I guess it's just a case of more Sonic-esque levels just as Tails, so I'll collect some rings, Chaos Emeralds, spin dash into some baddies, no biggie right? But my first reaction when I first played this game is just what is going on. Far from being the Sonic games that I remember, this game is actually an auto-scrolling 2D on-the-rails shoot 'em up with Tails flying permanently in the air, almost in a Gradius fashion. It sees our hero attack baddies with a single gold ring, which is also used to collect goodies to refill a constantly draining flight meter. That's right, a flight meter. I'm going to say it one more time, a frigging flight meter. Not an energy bar, but a flight meter. Okay, calm down Lucas, your pills? Anyway, the idea is to maneuver Tails through 5 stages, with one being a training area to help you get to grips with the controls and what to expect, but even the training level is kind of tough. In fact, all the levels are tough. You see, Tails can only fly if the flight meter is full, however the further he progresses through a stage, the more the meter decreases, and if it runs out, then it doesn't matter where you are, you die. In fact, each level is full of obstacles to avoid, such as walls, regenerating blocks, and even the floor. That's right, the floor can kill you, so it's almost like you can't touch anything because, you guessed it, you die. I guess the developers were fans of the Silver Surfer because in that game he can't touch anything either without meeting his maker, so essentially it's not a good start for me. However, luckily the game's levels are full of a few different power-ups which can aid our bushy-tailed friend in the form of sweets which will refill the flight meter, and crystals which award you points, and if you are eagle-eyed, you can even pick up some 1-ups and some invincibility too. Some of these stages even have these bendy poles that ricochet our hero back and round to pick up some extra bonuses or to help Tails avoid some tricky obstacles. Each level also contains a bell which reminds me of Mario Land 2 on the Game Boy. The bell acts as a checkpoint, and if you die, and trust me you will start from that point provided you have enough lives to spare. I should also mention that the game is infinite continue, so at least the game won't start you from the very beginning if you have made significant progress. For the purposes of this review, I played this on the Sonic Gems Collection on the PlayStation 2, so all I can say is yay for save states. I think if I played this on an actual Game Gear, it would drive me nuts, as some of the obstacles are really unfair. How unfair, you ask? Well, sometimes it's hard to discern what is the background and what is an obstacle, so each time I found myself flying through things costing me lives, or thinking I was going to crash, and flying through the background which looked like a barrier. Confused? Well, I certainly was. I will be totally honest with you, the game frustrated me at first, but I really got into it, and despite dying time and time again, I got some sort of enjoyment out of it. The game admittedly is very short, and I beat it within a couple of hours. Each stage looks gorgeous and the gameplay is surprisingly addictive. With each death I was pumped with adrenaline and ready to give it another go, and I did enjoy the game for what it was. The best thing about this game is the boss fights. You essentially chase each one whilst firing your gold ring at them and blasting them in the face. If you get too low then you may crash, get too high and you could get splattered by the boss's projectiles. Beating each one is not too hard, and you really get a sense of satisfaction after smashing each one up and moving on to the next stage. I will say which cart is the hardest boss, but as long as you try and stay high, away from the rails and keep spamming her intermittently, you will eventually get the better of her. So once you beat her, that's it. There's nothing new to find, no secret ending, and no real need for replay value. I was expecting a cryptic "the end" with a question mark, but no, it's a very short game, and one which retro gamers should be able to get through quite quickly despite multiple deaths. I award Tails Sky Patrol a 3.5 out of 5. I love the concept of the game and really wish the developers Sims Biox would have given Tails more stages, maybe even thrown some bonus ones, or even allowed Tails to upgrade his ring to be far more lethal, or even give him some gun upgrades to properly dispense Sky Patrol justice to the masses. Still, despite its length, it's still an interesting game and one I will only recommend if you don't mind the sometimes confusing and frustrating stage hazards that the game has. Okay, so now let's have a look at Tails' Adventure. Okay, so this is a game where there are a ton of things to talk about. Firstly, it was developed by Aspect, who have a knack for making some interesting video games and doing things slightly different with the source material. Aspect were responsible for Sonic 2 on the Master System, which was such a contrast to the first one, and serves as sort of a prequel of sorts in which Sonic had to rescue Tails from Robotnik. They also worked their magic on Land of Illusion, another Sega Master System sequel, which took everything about the first game, improved upon its formula and added in just a sprinkle of RPG elements. They also did a cracking version of Batman Returns, which in my opinion is a very underrated 8-bit interpretation of the movie. So expect a full review on these games very soon, as I do feel the need to give them some in-depth analysis. Anyway, Tails' Adventure for the Sega Game Gear is a Metroidvania style 2D platform game in which Tails must defeat an invading army of birds known as, and I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong, the Battle Cuckoo Army, or Cuckoo Army. Now, I did look up the story of the game and it does seem to differ in Japan and the rest of the world. In the Japanese version it is said that these events took place way before Tails met Sonic and is more of a prequel adventure. On the island resides the legendary Chaos Emeralds which wield great powers. The Cuckoo Army, which is what I'm going to call them, intend to steal them all and use them to conquer the world. Tails is sleeping outside and a small flicky wakes him up, informing him of the invasion. Now, the other storyline that we got in the West was that although Sonic and Tails had shared many adventures together, they both decided to go solo for a while, and Tails' journey takes him to once again find a small island. After deciding to take a much needed vacation there, he finds the island is then invaded by the Cuckoo army, so there are some subtle differences, but in both, little Tails, being the clever inventor that he is, decides to make a stand and go on a campaign of destruction John Matrix style. However, unlike Matrix, Tails won't be able to pop to his local artillery store and get tooled up. He must work his way through various levels using bombs as his main attack to firstly clear a path and to figure out where to go. I absolutely love this aspect of the game, pun intended, as Tails gets rewarded often, so the game rarely shortchanges you. You will spy many items which at first may seem unattainable and impossible to reach, so it becomes a challenge working out how to get them. More often than not, Tails is required to equip a specific item, enabling him to destroy a wall. In some cases he will have to take control of a robot to reach into small areas. You will need to find most of these items if you want to get further through the game, as these paths will be blocked until the required item is found and used. So the game once again is not a typical Sonic game. There are some references and Sonic-esque cues, such as Tails' health indicated by rings, the fact you have to find different coloured emeralds to increase his total, and there's even a cool Sonic item that allows you to spin dash. When I say it's not a typical Sonic game, it's again more akin to Metroid, in which the game doesn't tell you where to go or what to do, but rather leaves it up to the player to try and figure out how to progress forward, what key items are to be used, and when to use them. There are no acts, just differently themed levels that must be visited time and time again to unlock new paths, find hidden items and fight bosses. Tails not only takes his fight to the Cuckoo on land, but he does also by sea. That's right, the clever little fox has built a submarine, meaning he can now dole out some damage underwater. This means he will have to look high and low for some weapon upgrades to be able to effectively tackle the underwater nasties. It's a very strange but enjoyable experience at the same time. The game is also part strategy, as Tails collects many items but can only take 4 with him on each level, so there's an awful lot of trial and error and backtracking to his house to ensure he has the right items to get through the game. But one which is never an annoyance, as it really gets the player thinking, and it's nice to actually feel good about knowing that, okay, I don't have the right item now, but I will get it eventually. The game allows you to arm Tails to the teeth with a variety of deadly weapons. He starts off welding bombs, but will soon be able to use a hammer, napalm bombs and even a pair of knuckles, allowing him to drop his enemies with relative ease. This game is incredibly immersive, and as you can probably tell, it's not your typical Game Gear title and will keep you occupied for hours as you try and figure it out. I will say that as good as the game is, it does get a little bit too cryptic for its own good. Now don't get me wrong, I love a challenge, but the game really kind of falls short towards the end. At some point Tails will have to venture into the water and face a plethora of laser cannons and mines which can hardly be avoided. I played this section forever trying to get through and would get killed each time. Apparently I needed to head into the volcanic tunnel level and blow up a wall. Another issue comes right here on the final Battle Fortress stage. Tails will come to an area with several conveyor belts, and this is where it seems like a dead end. Now you have to know to throw a triple bomb several times in a very specific place to blow blocks out of the other side. By doing this, the game sometimes lets you through, however sometimes it won't. So even if I knew I had to bomb that area, it has to be thrown multiple times before you can move Tails to the hidden door. Now if you didn't know you were supposed to do that, then you may think you have missed something. Now, I want to start by saying I do like online FAQs, but often I want to try and complete a game without them, and only in the toughest of circumstances where I feel the game's impossible will I consult one. But it's a good thing I did, because I wouldn't have known that I needed the armour to make me invincible to get through the insane underwater enemy patterns, or to find a not so obvious entrance to the final boss fight. But really that's all I found wrong with the game. It's an epic 8-bit adventure with fantastic graphics, pushing the Game Gear to its limits, and I really wish that there were more games in the series. aspect, as I mentioned, just seemed to take a franchise and turn it on its head, and the fact they developed a cool story to develop Tails as a character makes me smile. I had such a good time playing it for this video, I cannot recommend it highly enough, and for the purposes of this video, I used the Sonic Gems Collection for the PlayStation 2, which contains not only the 2 games in this review, but a host of awesome Sonic games. So I'm going to award Tails Adventure 4.5 out of 5. This is an absolute hidden gem of a game, and if you want a unique Sonic-esque experience, using the S word again, featuring Tails, then you can't go wrong with this game. Thank you very much for watching my video. Do you want to see more? Then please hit that subscribe button to be instantly notified when I upload a new review, and why not leave me a comment letting me know your favourite Sonic game, or reach out and chat to me. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time for some more reviews from my retro game room.